I've been dreading doing this review. I'm really behind on stuff anyway, but this is not what I'm looking forward to doing. So let's talk Solo, a Star Wars story. What's going on, guys? It's Will. So this is my quick review for Solo, a Star Wars story. Before I get started with this review, I want to make a couple of things well known. Number one, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. If you've seen my last Jedi review, if you've seen any pictures of my Star Wars collection of Legos, you will know that I'm a fan deep down of Star Wars, no matter what they put out. I love the original trilogy. I like a lot of parts of the prequels. So far, I'm loving the new trilogy that's been out, Force Awakens and Last Jedi. Yes, I did like it. Even Rogue One I thought was really good. So, with all that out of the way, and number two, if you like Solo, a Star Wars story, if you like this movie, if you came out of this movie really loving it, really thought it was like the best Star Wars movie you've ever seen, that's good on you. Not taking that away from anybody. If you came out of this movie completely hating it, thinking it was the worst thing since goat cheese, or whatever you really hate, if it was the worst thing imaginable, if you think Disney has ruined Lucasfilm and Star Wars for generations to come, hey, that's your opinion too. I'm somewhere kind of in the middle. So, Solo, a Star Wars story, basically is the Cliff Notes edition of Han Solo before we meet him in Episode 4, New Hope. This is telling his origin story. It's really just giving the quick run through of how he got his name Solo, how he got the Millennium Falcon from Lando Calrissian, how he made the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs. That is the majority of this movie without giving away any spoilers, because it's a prequel, so there's really no spoilers of the movie if you know about the character and where he's going. It's really just giving you the backstory for a character that, honestly, I don't think we needed. I did not hate this movie. Let's get that out of the way right now. I also did not love this movie. There are parts I really enjoy, which I'm going to touch on right now. So starting with the stuff I did like about the movie. I loved the Kessel Run sequence. It takes place about the middle of the film. It's a really cool action sequence. It really shows Han as an incredible pilot. It shows the emerging friendship between him and Chewie and how they work well as a team, how they pilot the Millennium Falcon, and yes, they do make the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs. I think they fudged the time a little bit, but it's 12 parsecs. I love Donald Glover's portrayal of Lando Calrissian. He does a spot-on impersonation of Billy D. Williams as a young Lando. He has the swagger, he has the walk, the talk, the whole 9 yards. It's a really good performance. I even like the performance of Alden Ehrenreich as a young Han Solo. He did a good job. I'm not going to say his performance was the worst part of the movie. I thought that what he was tasked with doing, I thought he did a really good job. Could you have found someone else to play a young Han Solo? Most likely. It's not like with Donald Glover with his performance as Lando. I don't think anyone else could have done Lando as well as Donald Glover did besides Billy D. Williams himself. With Alden Ehrenreich as Han Solo, you probably could have found somebody else to do the same job. But for what he did, I actually enjoyed his performance. So those are the parts I liked. Let's jump into the stuff I wasn't a huge fan of. Okay, number one, I have said from the get-go with this particular choice of a Star Wars story movie, I never thought it was a good idea to try to tackle such a beloved character and tell a backstory that no one really wanted to see. I really had no entrance in the backstory of Han Solo when he made his debut in A New Hope. It was really just my interpretation of it as I got older was that he's just a random guy who was good at smuggling stuff and got thrown into this larger world of the rebellion and all this stuff like that. By doing a backstory for that character, it takes away the everyman sort of feel that he gives, in a similar sense that Indiana Jones does the same thing. Whereas it really felt like almost like what they did with Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader, where that character didn't need a backstory. We were cool with what we had the character beforehand, but yeah, if you needed to tell how he got the Millennium Falcon, how he got his name Solo, which was honestly the dumbest thing in the movie, but whatever, how he made the Kessel Run, we knew these things, except for the Solo part. That was really stupid. But we knew the things about how, he got the Millennium Falcon from Lando in a card game. They told us that in Empire. The Kessel Run in 12 Parsecs, that was just a boastful claim to fame that he was using when he first met Luke and Obi-Wan. It wasn't necessarily something we really needed to see, although I did like the sequence in the movie. The biggest complaint I have about the movie is that it wasn't terrible. It wasn't a terrible movie. If you just told me this was a movie about a bunch of smugglers and thieves in space trying to pull off a heist, if you told me that, and it's a fine movie if you just base it off of that, but because it is a Star Wars movie, you kind of have to base it as a Star Wars movie, and as a Star Wars movie, it's not really good, it's not really terrible, it's just in the middle. And that's disappointing. In terms of Star Wars movies, the reason that's really disappointing is that up until the last year or two, the films were always big event films. And if you look back at the original trilogy, there was about 3 or 4 years between each movie, and then there was about a 16-year gap between the end of Return of the Jedi and when they came out with the prequels, and so that was a huge deal. And there was still about 3 or 4 years between each movie. And then there was another 10, 12-year gap between Revenge of the Sith and Force Awakens. So when Force Awakens came out, it was such a huge deal. Same thing with The Last Jedi. It was such a big deal because it was the sequel to Force Awakens, and Force Awakens had this humongous box office, and it was the first Star Wars movie in like 15 years, so it had all that weight too. And even Rogue One had some anticipation, had some build-up with it, because it was the first standalone one. It was something completely different with new characters that we've never seen before, even though they sprinkled little Easter eggs like the Darth Vader scene and the horrible CGI, but all in all, Rogue One was a heist film and it was really cool. With Solo, you didn't have that. You didn't have the build-up of X amount of time in between the last Star Wars, because we just got Last Jedi back in December. That's like about 5 months in between, and so there was no build-up, and then there was all the behind-the-scenes drama and stuff, which I'm not gonna. It had so much to live up to, but not because of it being a standalone movie or a prequel about Han Solo. It was because of a lot of the other outside forces that kind of hindered the movie. And also, it was a movie, in my opinion, that no one was really clamoring for. If anyone was clamoring for any sort of backstory for a character, it's probably Obi-Wan. Because the time frame between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope is completely unexplored territory for that character. And he has a development from the prequels and a development during the original trilogy, so getting that sort of in between would probably be really interesting. I never felt that way about them doing a young Han Solo, because I always thought of Han Solo as just the everyman who was thrown into this wild and crazy adventure, whereas Luke had the legacy baggage. Leia was the princess eventually discovered to be his sister. So those two things gave those characters more weight in terms of, oh, I wonder where their legacy came from, because they're such legacy characters. Han is a legacy character, but he's a legacy character for different reasons. The reason he worked so well in Force Awakens is because we hadn't seen him since the end of Return of the Jedi. And there was no real information, besides, unless you read the comics and the books, there really wasn't a lot of information about the character. So I'd rather them had done something between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens with the character, but that would be convincing Harrison Ford to come back and do something, instead of to do a prequel of how he met Chewie. They're really good buddies. We don't need to see how they met, because at the end of the day, their friendship is great, but it's not the end-all, be-all of the story. The story was really about the Skywalkers. He's only in the story of the Skywalkers because he ends up marrying Leia. So I never thought the movie was necessary. Not saying that any movie is not necessary, but because it's Star Wars and Star Wars has such a rabid fan base, I think you were always going to set yourself up to have another mixed film where, granted, I don't think they ever expected Last Jedi to be so mixed in the eyes of some of the hardcore fans, but it just it felt forgettable. Like, that's my point, is that Star Wars, every movie, good or bad, is super memorable. You know, with Rogue One, it was super memorable that all the characters ended up dying in the end. In terms of the original trilogy, that's completely memorable because most of us grew up with it. Even the prequels, as divisive as the prequels are still memorable for the reasons of people growing up with the prequels, or to see the actual rise of the Empire and the fall of the Republic. It had some really good lightsaber battles in the original trilogy. I mean, in the original trilogy and in the prequel trilogy. So Star Wars should be memorable. It should have memorable moments. You should be able to walk out of the theater, good or bad, be like, I'm going to remember that forever. But with Solo, I walked out kind of like, it was okay. It wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. But the biggest thing is just I don't remember most of it. Besides the Kessel Run sequence in the middle of the film, I couldn't tell you really a lot of the other little things in there that are going to stick with me forever. They had some interesting new characters, but they were rather killed off or completely wasted. And then there's a cameo for a character that, unless you kept up with the Clone Wars or Rebels outside of the movie universe, you won't really know what that person's meaning is. Yeah, so basically, Solo was just okay. And to say that about a Star Wars film is pretty disappointing in my eyes. I don't think it's worth seeing in theaters. You can probably get away with just watching it on Blu-ray. It sticks with you if you connected with the film. That's great, and I appreciate that you find things in films that other people don't, or other people find things in films that you don't. All of movies and film and television and geekdom is completely subjective. It's whatever you like. Myself, as a huge Star Wars fan, I just kind of felt like I was wanting more from it, or even something totally different. I always felt that the Star Wars stories were just anthology films, just completely standalone, and the ending of Solo left me thinking, are they doing a sequel to a Star Wars story film when I thought the Star Wars story films were supposed to be complete one and dones, like Rogue One? So, yeah, like I said, I haven't been looking forward to doing this review. Being such a big Star Wars fan and to basically come on camera and say I was not impressed with this movie and I felt kind of disappointed and at how forgettable it was, it kind of hurts. Like I said, I did love the Kessel Run sequence. I think Donald Glover was the standout star of the movie. And I thought Alden Ehrenreich did a good job as Han Solo. Besides that, there's really not much else to say about the movie. Yeah, so Solo. Star Wars story. Have you seen it? If you did you like it? Did you not like it? Are you in between like I am? Whatever you thought, leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you and get your opinion of the movie and what you liked about it or what you didn't like about it. I appreciate you guys for watching this video. If you do like this video and any of my other videos, as usual, please like, share, and subscribe. I am on Twitter now. I joined Twitter. So if you are on Twitter and you'd like to follow me, my handle is @DGeekWill on Twitter. And yeah, that's basically it, guys. Till next time, catch you later.